So I'm not going on the mouth ride. I'll
All right,
just chill
welcome
here. Yeah.
everyone. We are live for those who are in Resonate. For those of us who are watching here live on LinkedIn and on YouTube, thank you very much for joining us. This is another session of Creating Reality presented by XR for Europe and XR Must. So these are interviews with virtual world creators, makers, designers, artists, developers. And this particular session, I'm very pleased to be hosting Tosca Teran, aka Nanotopia, who's going to be showing us little snippets, little teaser, and a taste of a project that she's working on, which we're going to learn a lot more about. But let me first uh, welcome her and her team. We're going to introduce them, and I'll go ahead and say thank you again to XR Must for the support to put these sessions together, so that the best and the most innovative of the creative XR industry has a platform to talk about what motivates them, to talk about what they're doing to kind of push the envelope in terms of what's possible, particularly in the multi-user virtual platforms, which this particular project takes place in Resonite. And for those of us who saw the last session of Creating Reality with Jason Moore and the Alien Rescue Project, it also now takes place in Resonite. So Resonite is a really exciting platform, very powerful. You're going to see some really interesting things probably over the next 45 minutes or so. But without further ado, so Tosca, who's joining us and will be guiding us through this project, is a first generation Mexican American interdisciplinary artist. So she described herself as a human holobiont. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, Tosca, holobiont.
Yes, you are.
Okay. All
Holobiont.
right. I should have asked. It sounded right in my head. Her work is a confluence of art, ecology, and craft. So she constructs multi-sensory installations. This is not her first one, but I dare say this might be the most ambitious one that we're going to be seeing very soon. And so she collaborates with a lot of other world builders and virtual world creators to make these things possible. So she asks in her art for people to consider the non-human sentience while recognizing their human impact on the shared environment and focusing on the intelligence of the interstitial that forms the living webs around us. So he's going to dive a lot more into these motivations over the next few minutes. So her work has been featured at SOFA New York, the Toronto Design Exchange, MoCA Toronto, the Ontario Science Centre, Music Works, Vector Festival, Studio Art and Craft Canada, Sonica 21, NICE, Ars Electronica, the Art Gallery of Victoria, and VR Days Immersive Tech Week Rotterdam. That was done with Eurimmersive as a collaborator to make that possible. So her projects have also received funding, support, and residencies from the Goethe Institute Montreal, the Canada Arts Council, Big Sci Environmental Arts Award, or Environmental Awards of Australia, the Ontario Arts Council, the Toronto Arts Council, Sunny Buffalo's Coalesce Center for Biological Art, which is also a member of the Genome Environment Microbiome and Community of Excellence program. So previously she had a project called Mycelia, which I think is where she broke a lot of ground that she's continuing to evolve and develop here. And that was also in a social VR platform, and it was a multi-user audience experience. So this is not a new type of work for her, I would say broadly, but let's get into it. So Tosca, let me go ahead and turn it over to you. Fill in the gaps with what I maybe missed in presenting your rather comprehensive background in multidisciplinary arts, and introduce this project and who you're working with.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me and inviting us to talk about this project and its evolution over many years now, and the new team I'm working with. Pretty much, I mean, there's a collaborator that's been working with me for quite some time now, and I'll talk about them. And so I guess, I'm wondering really where to begin. Like, you've pretty much nailed most of it. Mycelia is a project that was starting to really look at how biodata might be able to be brought in, but it was fairly limited in what we could do at the time with VR chat. And it was definitely a branch off of this project, Symbiosis Dysbiosis, which really the whole thing started. And maybe I'll just kind of walk around this little space we've created here that's kind of representing a strange little fungal microbial world. But so in 2020, when pandemic restrictions were put into place and everybody's lives, pretty much job, work, everything came to a screeching halt, we were all really, who knew what was going to happen and where this pandemic was going to take us and stuff like that. To my surprise and actual honor, I was invited to be a participant in the Goethe Institute, Montreal's New Nature Climate Science Exchange, which was an exchange between Germany, Canada, Mexico, and the United States. And they invited a number of technologists, scientists, and artists to participate. This was curated in part by Samara Chadwick, who had seen some of the artists' work and knew some of the scientists from her travels around. So we were all invited to consider the new nature of where this pandemic might lead to, or would we view like our lives differently? We would have to view our lives differently, or our interconnectedness and things like that. So we were all asked to consider that over. It was a week-long meetup. Consider these things, and everybody got to present a proposal. So I really was thinking a lot about my work with biodata and fungal mycelium, and considering sentience with that, and pretty much communication. In one way, I've really kind of started with that was musically. So connecting biodata modules that I would build based off of Sam Kusomano's schematic. I would build these and then connect them up to my synthesizers or to a digital audio workstation. And this was a really interesting way, I felt, to kind of consider, I guess, a lot of people anthropomorphize the sounds that they're hearing too, or they put, whether it's negative or positive. And the mycelium is usually like it's grown in a certain type of container. I cultivate it myself.
And maybe Tosca, maybe this is a chance to show that image of the.
Oh,
the
yeah,
mycelium.
yeah.
Maybe that would
Good
put
call.
the,
So we have right now in an Erlenmeyer flask, pretty much next to me in my studio space, I have some mycelium that actually, it's been going along fairly strong. It's some Pleurotus austriatus, which is oyster mushrooms. And so I've had that now for maybe 3 months, 4 months. And I have electrodes. In the past, I used to really work with SNAP TENS electrodes, where you place a biomedical pad on, similarly to how you would collect data from a human. But I started creating gold wire electrodes, or I'd even use occasionally acupuncture needles. And I'm going to tangent a bit, kind of like mycelium. But anyway, so the reason I started using finer and finer wire and needles, and while I was at SUNY Buffalo, I was working with technician Solon Morse, and we were trying to make glass electrodes that would be fine enough to be placed within hypha, like the hyphal threads of what make up mycelium. Anyways, let me roll it back. So during the Goethe Institute's presentation, they then, because we were all stuck at home, and I proposed symbiosis dysbiosis, and that would be human beings recognizing that we are all a part of nature. Often people view nature as the weather, or it's that park little forest patch over there, rather than we're all part of this organism that we call Earth. and this interconnectedness. And not to sound, super new age here or anything like that, but just really scientifically, we've been just collectively researching, scientists looking more and more into microbiomes. And of course there's the gut biome, and there's the we're finding like our skin biome, and then there's the forest biome, and there's just our house, or the pets. So I've always been interested in what we leave behind, when we touch something, what we're leaving on that beyond dead skin cells, and what cat hair or forest things and stuff. So I wanted to figure out a way of really, how could we show that? And VR is really an excellent, incredible way of bringing that, I feel, visually, and experiencing that, being able to come into the world and seeing these visualizations of this interconnectedness. And with that, working with EEG, really, I felt was a way that we're bringing in like human, kind of the mental state, if you will, or like cognitive state, emotions, and things like this. So the Goethe Institute were really into it, and it wasn't really a contest or a competition. They didn't want to call it that, but they did kind of want to select and give some R&D funding. And during that time, because while it was a week-long process in May and April of 2020, the whole New Nature exchange ran through December to December 2020. So during that time, Dames Making Games, Toronto, and Trinity Square Video offered me a residency, and with that, a little bit of funding and support and equipment, because at that time, I didn't even own a PC. So that really helped me, obviously, be able to get into VR, to have access to a gaming PC, but it also enabled me to approach neuroscientist and game coder Brendan Lehman, who is of
He's there with you now, yeah.
Yeah, who's of Dream Bike Gaming Co-op Toronto. And Brendan has been coming along for this ride and evolution of this project ever since. So we first started iterating in the Unity game engine. We were considering this to be like more of a standalone experience, and working at that time with photogrammetry. And from there, during that time frame, I'll say in 2021, we were looking at VR chat, and that's when we kind of took this turn and were like, hey, let's create something fun for Amaze Berlin. And we were working with Sarah Lisa Vogel and a number of other people. And so we happened to get into Amaze, probably because Thorsten was like, he had me at mushrooms. And so we created this really fun experience. But then that really brought the social VR element. I liked the concept of being able to share with a lot of people this experience. And Neos was being talked about. I didn't really know what that was, but I want to, maybe what I could do is even pass it now to Brendan, aka Neurochems in VR. And what we're doing now, I think, yeah, I don't want to ramble too much, but okay. So today,
that's the journey to here.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a really long journey. So we were awarded the R&D grant from the Goethe Institute. They absolutely supported the project. We did hear from the jury of that it was incredibly ambitious, and they didn't know if it could ever actually see the light of day because of all the technology, and also again because of the pandemic restrictions. Nobody was really sure where it would head. So we were working with the OpenBCI, Cyton and Ganglion boards for a bit.
You
which
might
are
have to
fantastic.
explain some of these terms, because I know you're deep into.
Yeah, I'm so deep into it. So so today, anyways, we've moved. I'll pass it to Neurochems for that, but we moved from OpenBCI to Muse, and the Muse EEG device, and there's a number of reasons for that. I'll say my first reason was really onboarding, considering easier onboarding for people. So today we're wearing our Muse EEG devices, and we also have fungal mycelium connected in, as everybody saw from the image you shared. So we've been working with WebSockets. I think I'm going to pass it now to neurochems, and they can talk about how, maybe a little bit of that evolution from maybe OpenBCI to Muse, how we were working with a certain type of flow now into Resonate and using OSC.
And maybe I can also I see that you have these luminescent lines coming out of each of your heads. But we can't quite see it. But I think I don't know if you can move the camera just a little bit.
Can I get closer?
There you go. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this data that each of you, I think, each of you have this going. I know
Yes.
at least you and Nanotopia does.
Yeah.
So this is real time EEG data
Yes.
from a device that you're wearing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Brendan. Yeah, we've been working on this one for a while, and it's been really satisfying getting to watch these things come to life and getting these like different data streams coming in and getting to play with them. We started with back in the Unity symbiosis, dysbiosis, new nature time, playing with the OpenBCI boards. They're open source hardware, EEG hardware that you can get from OpenBCI shop. They're the cheapest, most flexible balance of EEG hardware you can get. So they were an easy go-to to do some testing. But the catch with those is that they're like wire electrodes, and you have to use gel and tape
that
things
sounds
down to people's heads, and it's not great.
Yeah.
For art installations, great for research, great for experimenting, but people in public, not so much. So I'd at the time of picking up this project and pre-COVID, I was actually working at Muse and was working on their research team, building some of their meditative experiences, the audioscapes, and the way the data interacts with them. And we, after experimenting with the OpenBCIs for years, I guess, we just reached out to Muse. Once the project got a little bigger and mycelia took off, and they were really kind and offered us some access to some of their scores, computed scores that engineers have worked on. So they're really smooth and accurate, and the Muse headset, of course, is way easier to put on. There's no gels, there's no conductive paste, and it just comes on and off and calibrates really easily in their app. So that's what we've been working with right now, and you can see it above our heads. We've got it coming into Resonate right now from a little data stream through some OSC software, and we're bringing that into Resonate with OSC with a tool that just got added to Resonate conveniently. So it's working really well, and we've been experimenting with using the scores to drive certain things. We're mostly through some training setups right now. So there's some orbs that move up and down as kind of a breath guide, kind of the one that you can see in front of me, and the light on it will get deeper the more focused and in a meditative state you are, because that's what the Muse is designed to sort of capture, and you can really play with that calm state and meditative, immersive sort of flow kind of states that games and VR experiences are really like good at getting that out of you.
So
And
can I confirm?
this
You said that,
one,
Brendan. You
sorry, go
said
ahead.
you said is the motion of the ball right now being directed by that incoming EEG data? Is that what you?
This one in particular was just as an example of our like training, sort of training mechanic where
Mhm.
the ball floats in like a 4/4 breath pattern, just to give you a guide so you can sort of breathe along with it and help you get into the meditative state. And
Mhm.
the color of it, the purple, is attached to the data, so you can see it get more purple uh, as you breathe along with it. And um, we're also playing with the this electric orb over here. We've been playing with things where, if multiple users are in the world at a time, we've been toying around with some measures of synchrony between the users. And this one's just the size of it. Shows the sort of like if the users together are in a similar state. And these are just demos for now, and we're going to be working towards this through the summer on kind of implementing the scores and the ways they can affect things in the world into the kind of bigger environments, and kind of setting them up so they're kind of subtle and help deepen the immersion of the players. So very exciting.
Yeah, and if I can add to that,
Please.
so something we might briefly just click on, the static view of this very strange being. So what you see there,
That is an accurately described being.
yes. So this, I mean, we'll just look at that really quick, and then we'll come back to maybe my point of view as I'm looking around. So what we're doing with the EEG and combining with the fungal mycelium is, in the experience, people are connecting with the environment. And so, or at least that's the symbiosis part of it. The dysbiosis is that they do not connect with the environment. And so the environment is being represented by the living mycelium. And what happens to you over time is you start to transform as you connect with the environment. And really, it's in here, it's a transformation, but it's to show your connection with the environment, if you will, like your holobiont self. Like if you had microscopic vision, let's say, and you could see your biome on your skin and the biome around in the air and the biome from, let's say, a tree branch or something like that. So this transformation takes place. Alongside that is we're working with something called the microcelia, which is a really cool scentimeter. And so that gets triggered like by the mycelium in the forest for a very subtle, like if you smell something, it would be very subtle, but just considering a deeper immersion. And like right now, if you see from my point of view, I'm trying to move myself here.
Mhm.
So like this little mushroom here, that
This
looks,
changed colors a couple times.
yeah, it changes color. That's the mycelium right now, just driving like the color on it. And on these larger kind of turquoise with the pinkish rim, right now the mycelium's also driving those. So they appear to
When you
fade in and
say,
out.
oh yeah, when you say driving, you meaning
So
it's changing something about the
yeah,
textures or changing about the shape.
yeah. So we
Okay.
have and so in an installation like this involves like a IRL or in real life installation component in its, why I'm referring to it as expanded or extended reality at all is because there's a physical aspect to this where um, generally in installations I'll have a terrarium with the mycelium connected into my synthesizers, the computers, There's like, live soundscape accompaniment, but the mycelium is driving aspects of the world. So the more how we're doing that in combining the human EEG with the mycelium, that's when really, I'll say, magical things start to happen in the experience. And so part of this, like our onboarding training, involves these spheres so people will come in and see their EEG, not like today how you're seeing it over our heads. They'll actually see graphs so they can get more of a sense and go through a bit of a training in breathing and kind of get a better clue on how that works, like through taking some deep breaths that can really change what's happening.
Like a mindfulness thing, right?
Yeah,
it's about being aware of how you.
It is. Yeah, how you move through the environment is really a good thing.
And could we look at those two? Because I saw just a moment ago, but I'm not sure if the audience would have been able. Yeah, just now you see there's just a contouring of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what right now? There's just some really interesting things you can do with materials, and I'm sure you can do them in Unity. But I guess Resonite right now doesn't have a shader engine in it, so you have to get really creative with the effects and materials you work with and filters you can work with, and which are actually fantastic because it really makes you, like, it pushes you to really think, I feel, to use that term, outside of the box, and how you're going to make something kind of look like it's a shader, or what I'm trying to say. Like, so you can see what I have here is I just have a normal map.
We're seeing that normal map.
Yeah,
for
so
those,
it's kind of,
where the light is,
so I think
simulated.
if I get closer, so it just appears, and so that's for this, but for like that holobiont being that you saw, so they start to gradually transform and particle effects start to maybe grow out of them, or microbes and all kinds of things start to appear. I don't want to show too much because spoilers.
This is a teaser for a project that hasn't, it's still in production and hasn't been premiered yet, just for everyone in the audience. So we're seeing very early stages of something that's still got some ways to go in terms of design and development, if I understand correctly.
Yes, absolutely. And so I will introduce now an incredible person that I feel incredibly fortunate to have been introduced to. And I was introduced to them through the MMC 2023, which is the Creator Jam kind of big awards ceremony. They hold a contest, and I think you know a bit about that, right, Michael? Like you're familiar.
So the Creator Jam is like a weekly creative jam session taking place in Neos before, and I guess in Resonite now. For those who know a little bit about the developmental history of Neos and Resonite and that relationship, it's there's a shared background in terms of the development. So the communities have kind of one followed the other. Resonite has followed Neos as a platform, and much of the community has moved over because there's a lot of similar functionalities. And so this Creator Jam is an incredible thing that's been going on for like 4 years or something like this. It's a really long time, almost every weekend, and brings people from all over the world to collaboratively and in real time create together, in these platforms where a lot of game engine functionality is present in the platform in real time and is multi-user collaborative or multi-user editable. So yeah, that's just what I know about the jam.
Yeah, so I for MMC 2023, I was invited to do a little performance, and because I had no idea, actually this was in Neos, I should say, which was a platform that we had started to consider, and luckily we didn't move too far with that. But for MMC 2023, there was an incredible, I say creative technologist that I was introduced to help me bring kind of an aspect of Nanotopia into Neos. And they are like, in my mind, they're a genius. Some people joke that they could be an AI. But their name is Rix. And they are a member of the Creator Jam, and you pretty much talked about who they are, what they are. So I'd like to pass it to Rix, and Rix is really both. I want to say like Neurochems and Rix, I consider collaborators. I really consider Rix a massive collaborator. They've been incredibly just so generous with their time and helpful. And they are the glue in so many ways because they really have incredible ways of looking at things differently and troubleshooting. But they are the coding, one of the main the main coding person next to working with neurochems and stuff like that. So Rix, maybe you could, kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing, and because yeah.
Okay, yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Rix, and yeah, like I first met Nanotopia through our MMC, which we were hosting for the Creator Jam. You already mentioned Creator Jam, and yeah, I'm one of the board of directors in there, and I work a lot with Medra and the other ones. And yeah, and when with Nanotopia, we had similar like ideas or so, where we like build everything around the mushroom theme. So Nano approached me some time ago, and then we just built everything here ever since. And yeah, so like on my day job, I'm mostly building in the field of IoT devices. I'm doing this for like 10 years now, so there are like roughly 3 million devices which kind of run stuff that I build, which is kind of a little bit scary, but this is like my passion. I like the boundary between the analog and the digital world, so bringing stuff together. So for example, with Nano's project is like absolutely my alley. I also do a lot of ham radio stuff, which I'm doing with another group here in Resonite, where we kind of break the boundary between the digital and the analog world in bringing like the different radio modules and protocols here into Resonite, so we can operate from here. And you have also, for example, like the temperature you see over my head are from like my smart home thing. So I kind of really drink the Kool-Aid on all this, bring data into VR. So yeah, and yeah,
Rix, maybe then you're the perfect person to ask. What type of data is easy to bring in? Because I think if there's a lot of people who want to think about, I'd like to interact with the real world and incorporate that somehow into my design, but what types of devices or what types of data sources, in your experience, are just a little bit easier to bring into platforms like Resonite or Unity or other types of tools that may be available to creators?
Okay, so let's start with the more generic one. Neos and Resonite, like pretty much since the introduction, support two different formats. One is HTTP requests, which are more for synchronous tasks, and WebSockets, which are for asynchronous tasks. So if you have these both technologies at your hand, you can basically bring in anything you want in here. So for example, for this project, we started off with WebSockets because we kind of wanted a continuous stream of data for the EEG headband and the fungal data. And in order to make this really work, we built like little helper programs to aid us. One was a bridge between the MIDI data, which are coming from the mushrooms, and then going into the WebSocket, and also the data coming from the EEG headbands, which were natively in Open Sound Control. And then we also translated it into WebSockets. But since the project started, and now like a few weeks ago, OSC support is now natively included into Resonite as well. So we migrated most of our technology onto Open Sound Control, which makes it a little bit more easier because, for example, for the WebSocket stuff, we needed to like handle all the different states they were in and did the session management ourselves in the background. And now with this natively supported, I can actually show you some of the data. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
I'm always a huge fan of seeing
so
Resonite menus.
Yeah, so in Resonite, this is the real magic. I'm going to my POV.
Yeah.
So in Resonite, the magic is you basically build everything in-game. You have certain tools, and one of the main tools is the inspector here, which is kind of the way how you do game development in Unity or so. You have your basic hierarchy, you can navigate through it, and then you have all your components. And for example, I'm inspecting Nano's EG visualization over her head. So you see this little gizmo over there. And I grouped everything inside this variable slot. So for example, for the whole OSC thing, we can install something which is called an OSC receiver. So this thing it basically acts as a server where you just expose a port, and then you can connect all your OSC devices to this, and then you can subscribe to different passes in your OSC data, and then you can drive certain stuff. And for intermediate stuff, I've defined a dynamic variable space, which is like some way of handling data here in Resonite. And you can see it gets updated all the time when something changes on your backend. So this is pretty cool, because here in the other one, where we had the WebSocket stuff, it all was basically on receive events. So if a receive event happened, we need to do some parsing and stuff. So now everything gets handled automatically, and this is like super amazing now. And we will probably migrate all our projects onto the OSC workflow.
Yeah. So is there, I mean, practically speaking, is there any real limit on how much data you can bring in? Is that just a matter of infrastructure, like connectivity and devices?
So in theory, no. I mean, at a certain point you get into bandwidth issues probably. And if you see, for example, for the OSC data, most gets driven. It's not, since this is Sono, it's not clear how the network traffic gets handled there, but I assume it gets synchronized in a certain way. For the WebSocket stuff, they were firing something which were called impulses, which are basically triggers which get synchronized over the network, and then the whole data model gets synchronized to the users. So this is something which then, depending on how many users you have in the world, kind of has like this exponential growth. Yeah. So, but in theory, you are not really limited to anything. For example, if you happen to have a project for like bringing big data sets in, for example, like a few years ago or so, when this was still Neos, I brought in visualization for data of the like the World Bank has a huge data set about economy, health, and stuff. So I brought everything in here and put the data on some kind of 3D map to visualize the data. So this was like 1 million data points or so in general. And I did this like on my local, like on a local instance where I was alone, and then I could pipe in everything through WebSockets, and this worked really okay. And for the live data here, and we did some throttling when we are using the WebSockets just in case. And we did this in intervals of like 100 milliseconds. But now with the OSC support, it kind of gets it doesn't have a limit in this sense. So yeah, the only caveat on the whole thing is Resonite supports only a limited amount of data times, and we don't have collections yet. This is on the Resonite roadmap, but for now we need to work around with it, either by using tuples. Tuples are still supported. You can have something like a float 3, which is like a tuple of 3 floats in a row, for example, to represent locations in 3D space. Or the OSC receiver, we're actually that smart, where if you OC value is an array of a certain kind of data, you can say, oh, I just want this and this index. So there's like, with the OC support now, there's like a way to going around this. But usually if you have something which is like an array for like different stuff or like structures or so, you kind of do your parsing in here, and this gets a little bit more tedious, but this can actually be done.
Okay. All right, but it's good that you just to walk back a few sentences. You made you gave an example of another project where you were bringing in, other types of data and to visualize it. And I think for a lot of people, they see the art conceptually, but maybe don't realize that in many ways it's exactly a data visualization project. And that's interesting because you start to think of what's the impact of artistic usage of data visualization. How would that inform potentially or open up new ways to express data in intuitive or in more subtle ways than just showing it with some type of graphics.
Right.
So that came to my mind just now, thinking of how this could unlock new ways to make people understand data that's being represented, out of context.
Interesting.
And maybe to show you something which Nano talked about is so we don't have like a way of directly defining new shaders or so. We just have a fixed set of materials which kind of have like a generic shader, like you have your standard PBS, you have some toon stuff and so, and then some tricky ones, for example, which do displacement or so, but you can't really change the behavior itself of the shaders. But most of the values are exposed to the user. So not only your different texture maps or so, for example, this is the normal map which we are driving, but also stuff like, in our case, the scale of the normal map, and also like many different other functions, even stuff like the render queue, where you can really crazy with rendering certain things in certain scenarios or so. But you see everything that has this pink border here is something which is called driven. So these values get programmatically changed here. So in our case, it's the normal scale of the texture, which is then driven by the MIDI data of the probably mycelium. So, and I can actually show you the MIDI stuff as well, because we haven't migrated this system for now. So, sorry, let me actually spawn a little helper thing here, because in Resonite you can also build your own tools, and many users have built certain tools. For example, like this one here, which is kind of a editor for the in-game programming language.
It's pretty cool looking too.
Oh yeah, this is actually really magic. The one who built this is really, really talented, and also contribute stuff to the Resonite core as well. And let me switch to my POV again. I can actually unpack the whole thing, and you can see here. This is the data which is coming in from the MIDI stuff, and you can see the live MIDI messages here. If you have like some knowledge about MIDI, this makes sense to you. Otherwise, these are just MIDI notes which are played now. They are coming from the WebSocket client here, and the WebSocket client is driven by Nano. This is her local IP, so I'm not doxing her. Don't worry.
Is that her EEG data?
Oh no, this is the MIDI data. The EEG data is already converted to OSC.
Okay.
But we didn't do this for the MIDI now, which is kind of fortunate, because then I can show you the connectivity which we did before. So we have some stuff for the connectivity here. We had some bigger stuff here, but it's got a little bit simpler now. And for now, what we are doing, we are just receiving the pulses, like accumulating them, and then just driving basically something which kind of represents the frequency of how fast we get to that. And this is driving the height map here. If you can see, the value gets a little bit smoothed here, and then it's driving another value. So, and
yeah, this is the height map that's on those mushrooms, just on the other side of that menu. And this is coming from the mycelia.
Yeah, and the impulses which I described before can actually see in this funky little visualization here. So you can see how many times they have been sent now, and like basically, for example, in this case here, Nano is the only one because she has all the mesh rooms. But if we had like multiple ones, you would see the impulses were color coded depending on which users they are coming from, and they get like distributed over the network.
And these could be all over the world. I mean, this could be taking things from different biomes, different regions, different I guess cultures of mycelia or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. You could definitely here we are like standing in the mushroom with the mushroom. Yes, and that is something really fascinating too, because you could then also work with IoT devices. So you could, and that's something, believe me, that I've considered is like actually connecting this to different biomes, like because this project kind of circles around old growth forests in British Columbia, which are really threatened by a lot of logging. And there's a lot of indigenous people, the forest defenders, and that are fighting right now, trying to protect them from that. And that's a whole other thing I could go into. But yeah, you could work with really interesting data. You could think of astronomical data too, and how you might work with that, and create an experience. I think that would be really fascinating. Weather data like that, I can pretty much connect in with different devices I have right now too. So you could have, you could base your whole world probably on real world, what I'm saying? Like you could do these visualizations, and that would be really interesting. In fact, I believe some of this does kind of take place and resonate through their EduSci group, which is Neosmotic kind of runs that. But
well, somebody did just reference in the chat. Resonate's quite powerful for science and education.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And so something too about this project, I guess, and my whole interest in Euroimmersive and beyond, and the XR community over there, and Resonate being a European platform. I mean, really, is Rick's, like, it's quite like the group involved and other people, like the extensions that are starting to happen and things like that. Rick's is based in Berlin. Neurochems and I are both residing in Toronto. Like, I'll just say separately, because often people think because we've been working together forever, I know they think that we're like partners. We're not. We're just friends and colleagues.
We just happen to live in the same city.
Yeah, we happen to be in the same city. And then South America, Brussels, France, the UK, and British Columbia. Like it's all over the place. But really, there's such a large focus and interest in XR and VR in Europe. And I think that's fantastic. There is here as well, but maybe on a festival front, or kind of venues, or where people can really share their work, or these experiences and things. It really feels like Europe is leading the way with that, which maybe Resonate. Yeah, case in point with Resonate. But yeah, so I think something we were going to do was maybe take everybody, if anybody has questions. I don't know if they're,
I actually have a question. We don't have it.
Oh,
so
okay.
yes.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time.
Feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat, and we'll try to get to it and flag up if there's one that you miss. I can see them, but I see a lot of comments. There's a lot of fans and a lot of Resonate community or Neos community
awesome.
active. But maybe I have actually a pretty serious question that it's for you, Tosca, because it's very much about design. So thinking, right, you bring in real world data from objects that may not be visible, may not be observable by your audience. So you're representing it digitally. And I've often found in my own past projects in like theater and such, that sometimes it's very hard for audiences to believe what they see is what you say that it is, because everything is, their whole experience is digital. So how maybe have you thought about how much your audience really understands? Like you've told them, but really believing that this is in fact a digital visualization of something very, very real and tangible, a living, breathing entity. I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to encounter someone who questions it or not, but I think
Mm-hmm.
anytime we have data viz, it's often a question of how much does the visualization truly impart an understanding of its source.
Right. Well, okay, so generally speaking, to share that, if I'm not able to share that digitally, or like right now, you can switch between views, and I don't know if let me know if I'm not answering the question correctly. But in this case, symbiosis, dysbiosis, sentience does involve a live installation component, because how this experience aims to kind of bring people into the story, connect wearing these EEG devices. And so I'm saying, there's a minimal of 3 people at a time that could come in, up to 5, at least going through the primary world experience. So in real life, you have an installation where people are there in these headsets, wearing these EEG devices. We, talk to them about, they see the device. We're going to show them the data when they come into the onboarding area. And also in the installation will be the living mycelium, where I can talk for days on the fungal mycelium and a lot of the research I've conducted, but I, can show them what's going on and better discuss, like, for instance, the boards that I'm working with work with microfluctuations in conductivity between 1,000 to 100,000 of a second. So, and it is a galvanic, like, skin response. There are other devices that can be implemented. There's also touchpads within the environment installation, physical installation, that people that are not in VR put their hands on, and that directly
Contributes.
It contributes. Yeah. It changes the data, so it changes something in the soundscape, because the living mycelium is there. And this is surprises people, and that's part of the thing that I think what you're talking about is, it's to imagine it, but to be there in front of it. And I've had people respond in all kinds of different ways. I've had people start crying when they experience it live. Not this particular experience, but a physical installation where the mycelium is there and there's touchpads. They go into the space and they're with it, but they're, depending on their, if they're touching it, if they just even come into the space, it change, like, the whole soundscape changes. Like, and that's not me messing with knobs or sliders. It is the mycelium responding to people within its area, just like plants, a bit different than plants, plants chemically responding. It's still research being conducted as to what the mycelium, like, what is it sensing?
Is responding to, yeah, exactly. But something
what is
about the presence, the human presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a number of people have, experienced this now, not just with me, but with other installations that people do. And even Sam Cusimano, who originated the schematic for this particular device, had an interesting story around that too. Is, so for instance, you're hearing certain sounds playing, and a pattern starts to emerge over time with certain mycelium. I, for this experience, will work with Ganoderma lucidum, which is also known as reishi or lingzhi, the mushroom of immortality. It's a bracket fungi. It's a medicinal, but it's also quite incredible in so many ways. And I have found, because I work with it a lot, compared to, say, right now, I have oyster mushrooms connected. The oyster mushrooms tend to be very aggressive, grow super fast.
Does that make it easier to work with because they grow so fast? I mean, is that when you're doing an installation?
No. Well, yes and no. I've had certain installations where I had a museum created these incredible kind of, but it was plexiglass, and they were square cases, and so they used the plexiglass cement on the seams. But on a microscopic level, you're not going to see that there's little holes in those seams, maybe. And what happened is the mycelium, after 3 months of growing, I
Got
get
out.
an email that, oh my God, the cases are busted and all these mushrooms are coming out the side of it. So nowadays I work with spheres that are when there's no seams, it's all blown. But so that was oyster mushrooms, and it was just a massive growing, wanting to, it's life, right? Where the Ganoderma takes a longer time due to it not grow, like its natural state is to grow on a tree and come out like a shelf. Kind of like, if you can see what's above me, like kind of right now, there's some little cocoons hanging from it, but yeah, so like a bracket, like stairs. And it takes just a longer time. But in an installation situation, like for instance, there's a plan in the works for this where I will potentially be going a week in advance to a week and a half in advance over to a lab in Brussels, and I will start some mycelium up for
For exhibition in Europe,
for
for setting it up.
exhibition for a hopeful world premiere. But anyways, my point with it really is the Ganoderma is very melodic, if you will. Like no matter what we have connected it to, whatever kind of synth voice, or I generally am working with analog equipment. Just I'm interested in that, the electrical, bioelectrical data going through electrical analog equipment. Just thinking about that, I don't know, fascinates me. But you'll start hearing patterns over time, and that's really curious too. So where was I going with that? I'm sorry.
Well, you were
But
talking
yeah.
about like this, the original the seed question.
Well, right.
So
Yeah.
to speak,
Okay.
was how to get audiences to understand what you're visualizing is really this true living entity.
Yeah. Okay.
So you were
So
saying like
yeah.
having it physically present is
Yes.
a big part of getting that understanding.
Yeah, definitely a part of that. And I usually have like I'm happy to answer questions, but there's didactic information too. There's I don't expect people to want to go and read these super dry scientific papers and things, but they can, with the terrarium, and they see the electrodes coming out of it. They see generally I'm pushing fresh oxygen into the terrarium and allowing CO2 to escape because mushrooms, breathe like we do. And so they, and again, walking near it sometimes. And it's interesting because people will generally, just someone that's not working in microbiology or mycology, we tend to anthropomorphize. I was kind of touching on that earlier, and I think to a degree in this instance of what I'm trying to say or where I'm wanting to take people with this experience, that's a good thing if people are anthropomorphizing and considering, that, this life form is aware. It's aware of you in the space. It's breathing like we breathe. It breaks down material like we digest material. Only it's kind of, it's not, or you could say it's encased in the body and that it's completely covering the planet. Like it's, right now there's a whole program that's going on through SPUN, which is mapping the mycelial network across the globe. I mean, there's even mycelium in the ocean, in the deep ocean that's been found. Oh,
Ooh, wow.
am I still here?
Moving,
yeah.
You're still there, but your camera just decided to go flying back to its origin.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened. So I'm gonna go. That could mean somebody got kicked out of the world. Can you still see me?
No.
We still see your camera, but it's not targeting to you. But it's giving us a really lovely kind of sunlight through the fog.
You lost connection for a second. I can re-invite you.
Okay. So I think I'm in a different world.
Oh, that's the power of virtual reality, I think.
Yes, it is. Okay, so I'll be right. I'll be back because I'm gonna.
Well, we hear you the whole time because so you can
at least you hear me.
Maybe.
So that's good. So I don't know why. Oh, I think Rick's got kicked out. I don't know. Yeah,
I
because
don't know. Rix is
I
still
don't
sharing
No,
his
I
screen.
don't
So
see Rick's. I see
I
Rick's is
sent you a
offline.
Riva invite. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, it's
Rick's,
probably some kind of network issue.
okay. So you're not
So
seeing. Okay. So
we're,
do
we're,
you
we're
see?
seeing the world. We're seeing a
Okay.
static image of the world, a nice little
Okay.
establishing shot.
Oh,
But
okay. Nice.
maybe
Okay. So I'm here back on the
there
ledge.
you are. Well,
So
third person.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Hi. So yeah, I'm gonna wait for Rick's to show up.
But maybe Tosca, could you tell us then? All right, so now we're talking about the installation, and
Yes.
it's particularly exciting maybe for the audience to know that you are gearing up for European exhibition,
Yeah.
hopefully sometime this year.
Yeah.
And so, can you just talk a little bit more about the installation? So you have to cultivate, I guess, in Europe, at least
Yeah.
within the travel jurisdiction of where you're going to exhibit.
Yeah.
The mycelia that
Yeah.
you will be using.
Yes.
And then you said I think it's at least 3 and up to 5 audiences simultaneously. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, what we feel is manageable, and also wearing the EEG devices, at least right now, and I'll just be honest, like what we can afford, is 5 EEG devices on 5 people. And so
Okay.
they enter the world. We have, avatars that they wear like a human, and you're going, there's the onboarding area, which, you can customize your avatar, of course, and then you go through the EEG training. So there's like an attendant in there,
Mhm.
and that talks to you and explains like the data that you're seeing and the breathing techniques that Neurochems was talking about earlier, which help you. It's not so much like we're trying to get people to meditate or totally get into mindfulness, but it is a way
But
for
they're part of
people.
they're
Yes.
part of the performance, right? Like they're
Yes.
they're
Yeah, they're part of the
contribution.
performance.
Yeah.
So it brings you into a more focused state, and you'll have an audio feedback. So each person has like kind of, maybe you have crickets attached to you, you have wind attached to you, and this, because when you're moving through the environment, you're not going to be seeing these moving spheres, right, necessarily, that move when you breathe. You're not going to see your EEG data, but you'll hear it. So when you are in that focused state, for instance, the forest environment might grow louder. When you're less focused, it will grow faint. When everyone is connecting, so that's something with the EEG, is a synchronizing starts to happen sometimes between people. They really, I'll use the term, like they really vibe together, or they're really like syncing.
On the same wavelength.
Yeah, you're on the same wavelength, quite almost literally. So what happens then is something very special. And when everyone gets into sync, there's some really interesting things that start to happen. But that's also, that coincides with, you start to, do you connect with the environment or not? And again, are you connecting with the mycelium? And if you're connecting, you're eventually transforming and becoming more and more your holobiont self, which eventually will lead you into the mycelium network and encountering the mycelial entity. So there's this aspect. There's actors. There's a VR theater aspect. So they're in the
There's a narrative.
installation, as a narrative, and taking you through the environment.
And we're
And
just getting kind of an eagle eye view of it now, but in
yeah,
the
so you're
experience of the audience,
seeing
they're gonna see
my
it in different
my
ways.
POV.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So something, I just thought it'd be fun. So there's in the live installation, I will be there doing a live soundscape performance, and so that's really interesting to me, because it's similar to like when movies in the past, like silent films would have
The live band.
the live band, live orchestral accompaniment. So I'll be playing music with that, and you can probably see this now. I got to invite.
No, we still just see
Oh.
your first person.
Okay, you see me?
Oh,
I
took over.
We don't see
Don't
you third
worry.
person.
Oh,
We
you
just
don't
you
see
third
me?
person.
Oh, okay. Okay, I don't know what you're seeing right now.
And I think we're seeing seeing the trees. We're seeing the fog. We're seeing the I guess it's the spheres. Maybe it's I don't know spores floating up and instantiating from the ground.
Okay.
It's a beautiful visual, and it's something that I think, as I was
Oh,
saying,
so you don't see that I'm flying right now?
we saw that you indicated flight before, but
Oh,
you're
okay.
not flying at this
Oh,
exact
that's too
moment. Right? You're
bad.
just looking around.
Oh, well, that's okay.
I saw somebody moving just below the view of the camera. So.
Oh, it's probably Rix. Rix keeps trying to invite me back, but I think I left, so I can't
Okay,
really
this
come
could
back.
be Rix's view. This could be Rix's
Yeah, I
view.
think you're seeing Rix's view, because I can't. But it's okay.
We see Neurochem flying
I'm
around
in the
down there.
I'm in the forest. I'm heading to the forest.
So you have a narrative. You've got actors.
Yeah,
So the actors are also
yeah.
physically located in the
They're
same space.
physically located within the installation.
Mhm.
And each one, will come onto like a little stage when they're oh, weird. Okay. So now I'm back. I'm back in the world and I'm gonna go out. So do you see I don't think you see what I'm seeing.
Oh, we just see, I think, Rix's view. We saw Neurochem flying around a little bit.
Okay,
I think
so I'm
Rix's
going back
view.
up here. If Rix could put me on point of view.
I think I saw you moving. Yeah, I saw you
Yeah.
from a distance.
Okay, so now you see my POV. Sorry about
No,
that.
not your POV. We're
Okay,
still seeing
Rix,
Rix.
can you put me on POV? I don't think they're seeing it. I see the live camera in front of me, but what do you see?
You're on screen.
I'm on screen, but do you see my point of view?
Yep, should be.
Okay. Do you see weird things
I
off in
guess
the
so.
distance?
It's hard for us to know who's who, but I did
Oh
see
yeah,
Rix.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
but so
okay.
it's you
See,
again.
Okay.
Okay. So as soon as Neurochems gets out
There
of the
he is.
sky, I'll
Sorry.
yeah, so it's all right. So yeah, so this I think is what you saw me initiating flight, right? But yeah, so it's a whole adventure into a microbial forest, and there's the installation component again with the actors who embody different characters, and and the living mycelium with the musical accompaniment, with the EEG devices, the biodata streams again from the mushroom or mycelium, microcelia. There's a chance we might work with exit suits. That's still being in discussion. Because ultimately, like right now, I'm writing a moth, but I am very much aware of people's discomfort often, so I'm wanting to keep that as minimal as possible. So there's a lot of testing we're doing. But so this is still very much a work in progress, and it's a work in progress that we will be, we intend to bring. I have submitted to Venice, and we intend.
And you've been there before with mycelia.
Yeah, we were a special invited event for that, but this would be in competition, and we're looking for support more, to develop this further, like to bring it really fully to its ultimate.
And this is, you mean
vision.
after, this is going forward, like this is.
Yeah, this is going forward. Like if we, in going to any kind of premiere, if this happens, we, as I said, it's a work in progress, because of timelines and just different things that have happened and stuff like that, and how much time we have to really get certain things together. Yeah, and so I think you can see the world now. I'm starting to come down in it. So this is also part of the work in progress, is like this layout space that we do a lot of testing in and stuff. And
it's a giant world.
Yeah, well, it's pretty. It feels larger than it kind of is. There's different. Look at these giant chanterelles. Some gourmand's dream, but yeah, so there's different. I don't want to talk too much about the characters, like, ideally not to give
Keep the
everything away.
narrative a little
Yeah,
underground.
but there's the narrative, and you're sent on this journey. Ultimately, I can say, I've already mentioned her, the mycelial entity, and essentially you're finding this rare fungus, if you will, and
And
yeah,
you encountered, yeah, I mean, there's the physical installation. So I mean, I would imagine most audiences are not going to be particularly expert or
yes,
informed about mycelia. So there's
yeah,
going to be a lot of learning from the physical observation of the mycelia in the installation. Then you have the
hmm,
EEG and the whole onboarding process, which should impart some mindfulness understanding. That again,
yeah,
presumably audiences, many of them aren't going to have a whole lot of experience with that, but we
yes,
could certainly
absolutely. Well, and with the breathing, I
Mhm.
feel instead of, really like, we're going to deep dive into some mindfulness practice now. It will be, I mean, I think eventually we could take it there. And maybe even for people that do have more experience, it could be that, just super like, wow, okay. It'll be interesting to take people in here, for instance, that do meditate on a regular basis, that put on the EEG device and hear that, audio feedback and see the world responding to them in the immediate. But for people that, like you're saying, that have no experience, they'll have this breathing, like it's just really the deep breathing. And again, in the onboarding, this is part of the training, and
Mhm.
it's part of the experience too. So you're watching your EEG climb, like you're changing that frequency band as you breathe. You'll see that. You'll see, these spheres in front of you changing. So and again, the audio feedback. So I think the
Well, again,
breathing is easy to relate to,
that's
right?
what I
It's
was going
just
to
like,
say. Like
yeah.
on the topic of like how to convince people that the visualization is real.
Oh, right.
A way to do that is to visualize breathing, or
Mhm, mhm.
something that is physically experienced and it can be conscious.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, and, there will be other things, and, if people get lost and stuff like that, that will help guide them through the space. And,
it's a
it's
really complex. I have to say, it's one of the more complex pieces that I've seen
mhm,
in VR, just because of how much is going on outside. Technically,
mhm, mhm.
we've seen a lot of installations that are really about transporting the audience. Before they get into the headset, the
Right.
installation is to help prepare them to put a headset on and to be in a new world.
Yeah.
And so I imagine you'll have that to some extent, but then
Yes.
the actual part of the piece is the installation itself, and
Mhm,
it stands on its own in some ways. I would
mhm.
imagine from the actual VR part. We have a couple questions actually.
Okay, okay.
Um, the first one, and again, apologies if there are some questions earlier in the comments. There's been a lot of comments, so it's hard to keep track of
Okay,
how many were actual questions. But we have one from Begum.
okay.
So I think she might have joined a little late. She's asking if you can mention a bit how you use the bio data, which I think we covered quite extensively
Okay,
at the
you're right.
beginning. But maybe just
Well,
to kind of sum it up for audiences who have joined
yeah,
our
yeah.
session a
So,
little later.
the biodata. So, what was the question again? Like, how are we using it,
Yeah,
or?
just how you use it. I mean, I guess that there was an earlier example where you were showing, and Rick kind of pulled up the menu,
Mhm.
how you change the height map, on
Yeah,
3D
yeah. So,
models,
for
which
instance,
really
yeah.
changes.
So we can, change height maps. Something that, if you're familiar with VR chat, or even, I guess, avatars, blend shapes are used and things like that to work with expression,
Hmm.
for your eyes, and your mouth. I mean, even if you don't have like a face tracking device on, like there's blend shapes that are working. So I guess you could take that concept of blend shapes and then put it on to a full avatar, where in this instance, as you connect, your avatar transforms. So the avatar, like you have on, starts to become the microscopic visualization of the holobiont.
Mhm.
So that's one way the mycelium's driving that. So the biodata, like your EEG, connecting with the mycelium, like, so, we're averaging things here, right? So let's say we take theta waves and delta waves, and so those are within a certain bandwidth, let's say, or frequency range, and the mycelium data, so all these numbers are coming in, so we can look at what those numbers are, like, let's say, if I say between 15 hertz in the brainwaves to 23 hertz, if the mycelium data is within that range, this is just an example, we could then say, oh, they're connecting, like the mycelium and the EEG are making a connection, so people are, we can tell that they're more calm. I should add that. So if they're in a calmer state, they're connecting with the environment. That biodata is then driving a transformation. So it could be driving the blend shape. So you're fully transforming. You're feeling that, let's say through haptics, you're seeing that through height maps and things, maybe reaching out to you or changing colors, the weather patterns changing in the space.
Like the
So
fog and such, you mean? Like
yeah, like
getting.
the fog, like,
Mhm.
and it's really foggy in here and really cloudy in here, just to emulate more of a British Columbia rainforest. They tend, anywhere on the Pacific Northwest coast, there's often a lot of fog if you're not familiar, and it's beautiful. Um, but yeah, so it can drive pretty much anything in the world, like anything within, how you create a 3D model,
Mhm.
using the
And you're still
materials. Yeah.
exploring. I mean,
Yeah. Oh
yeah, this
yeah.
is still something that's still being
Yeah,
like
we're still
tested and
exploring
designed. It's
what
an
we can
iterative
do.
process. Yeah.
You could have trigger events, you can have videos start playing, you can have and that's something too, that we can bring in touch designer visuals too. So like there's just different cross platform interesting app things that we can do here on the Resonite platform, but also oops, I can hear
Yeah.
yeah, I
Sounds
hear
of the forest.
yeah,
Yeah.
I hear sounds of the forest breathing. Um, so yeah, I think that really it's your imagination and what you might think of. Like I feel too,
Mhm.
we're always it's not really maybe it's kind of, no pun intended, brainstorming, where we're, like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Let's see what happens if we put this EEG data onto these particle systems that are on these emissions that are,
Mhm.
on and not just emissions, but there's like, Fresnels in here, so we can have noise maps or, noise displacement things happening. And
Well, I guess the exhibition itself is likely. And that's why we were talking about the post premiere. Is that you're going to get a lot of data that really can only
yeah,
be learned from audience, exhibition with
yes,
audiences, engagement with
absolutely,
audience, and so then the focus shifts to how do you build on that? How do you revise and adapt? So you
exactly,
mentioned
yeah,
we have another question, but just to follow
okay,
that line of
yeah,
thought before I jump to Sasha's question,
okay,
is you're preparing for exhibition this year in Europe, but you're also looking ahead to how to iterate and evolve this
yeah.
for continuing exhibition. And so you're looking for support. Is it from curators, exhibitors, producers, who would be
um
interested in having conversations with you? What type of support is it that might?
Producer would be really helpful towards really moving this forward too, like, and also something that's fantastic, I'll say, or well, we think is towards the potential of moving this and expanding upon it, is because we're working with Muse devices. Muse can be purchased, like anybody pretty much right now could
Mhm.
go and purchase a Muse 2 or a Muse S device. You're not necessarily going to have the access to the same data metrics we're working with. However, that how we're working with things, this could be expanded in other ways because people can access, the Muse headsets. Where OpenBCI is fantastic for research and all the things that Neurochems was mentioning, it's quite out of
Yeah.
reach of like your day-to-day person that might want to, they're going to go and invest over $1,000 on a board and just everything that you have to purchase, plus the gel, as they mentioned, and all these things.
Mhm.
It's not. Muse is definitely made and being created and sold now as something to help you, become more mindful, to sleep better,
More
meditation,
consumer, you
just to
mean?
be, yeah, it's more consumer based. So that is I think, a plus too for going with them.
Mm.
Yeah, and for the project. So we're looking for support in that in many different ways. A producer would help tremendously.
And maybe
Um,
sponsors, as
yeah,
you were describing
sponsors.
just now. Yeah.
Sponsors would be fantastic. Early on, we did obtain sponsorship from B Haptics, and they sent us development kits and things like that. And while I feel B Haptics is fantastic, it's really loud for the type of experience we're creating. To have some of the tests I have done it's so loud. I don't know. So I've also
Mhm.
tried building different types of haptic solutions to that with transducers and bone conductors, but that's another thing. But yeah, so yeah, sponsorship would be fantastic.
All right. So if anyone in the audience is interested in sponsoring or reaching out to offer support to the project as a producer, and I would again just say maybe curators, exhibitors, people
Mhm.
who have a vision that this could fit something that they want to organize later in the year, then you know reach out to Tosca at Nanotopia,
Yeah,
and we'll put the. I mean, you're on LinkedIn, so we'll put some of the
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn.
but we have
I'm
one
on
last
all the
question just to
socials.
before
Okay.
we
Okay.
and it's kind of relevant. It's from
Okay.
Sasha.
Okay.
So he asks if people will be able to participate from VR as well. And I think what he's
Uh,
meaning VR who's not on site there with you, but VR from anywhere in the world.
okay, that's a good question. Yes. Okay, so our plan is, again, it's almost like
To be determined.
yeah,
Is
to
that
be
the
determined. But yes, yes, Sasha, absolutely. Something that at least for the premiere, we are setting our sights towards. We have the technology, as Rick likes to usually say, we have the technology, is bringing people in from other, from off site, not at Venice, let's say, if we're there or wherever we might be. And they can join, and we can have quite a number of people join. Now, as far as connecting them, they would have to have, you know, a Muse device, and they would have to also have a subscription, likely to Muse, their app.
be able to
But
have their data accessible
yeah,
anytime
but
needed?
outside of that, if you didn't have a device, we have something that I didn't mention, but it's okay. I can quickly say we're calling them frequency spheres. So, and actually, that's a term you coined some months back, Mike, that I just thought was really cool. So, it's kind of a spherical, amorphous thing that people offsite, when they come through and they're wearing certain avatars, because you really have to embody the avatars that we have in here, because they're what's
Part of the
connected.
aesthetic, part of the
And you become part of the world or something like that. And so you would transform, you would feel like, say, we have people in headbands. If there's people even wearing headbands in an installation that are not in the VR experience, they're driving certain things in the world. So it's kind of like you're feeling, we've said, like almost like their emotional state. You're experiencing their experience. So you would transform, and you would absolutely, like, you could become part of the whole soundscape environment too. And so that's something we're working towards, having that accessible, that if we do performances, say, in the evening, we could have 20 to 50 people joining in the mycelium network and just having this really interesting experience.
a different one, like be part of it, but not necessarily be an embodied protagonist in the narrative. I think in a lot of there's a lot of these projects.
They could be, like they'd be some strange organism in the mycelium network that's changing and transforming and experiencing all, the data being driven onto what they're wearing. So, usually if you have certain devices, it's not that difficult to kind of get them set up. But yeah, I imagine a similar onboarding experience as Mycelia had, where we didn't have people driven, data going to people or anything like that. It was just coming into the world through the soundscape. For a maze, I actually had my studio, I had the computer on for a whole week, sending this mycelium data in. So if people would potentially come in at any time, they could touch this avatar and it would trigger haptic sensors in my studio, which then they'd get sonic and visual feedback. I think only a couple people actually came through during that time, because at night, or depending, whenever I'd be sleeping, I'd usually hear buzzing, which I knew were the sensors going off. Somebody was in the world touching the avatar.
Was in your home.
Yeah, somebody was in my home touching the mushroom. So yeah, we intend to have people be able to come in that aren't at any venue and stuff like that, and we really look forward to having that experience for sure, and seeing how people and people moving through the space and experiencing it. And yeah.
Okay. And a follow-up again from Sasha, again the same person who asked before, asking about whether those with the Muse headset could participate remotely. And I think you already addressed that. It depends on exactly what the structure of participation is remotely. There's that physical installation element, but then also having the headset, what access do you have to the necessary functions and services from?
I think I ultimately view this a little bit like, I'll say, my friend Jason Moore's Alien Rescue experience, in that outside of festival or gallery installations, and so you're not visiting the installation part there, I imagine ticketed, people being able to purchase, a seat, if you will, to come through and have the full actor and mycelial experience. And
if they have a Muse device, then that
if you have a Muse device, we can you would be connected likely through one of our accounts, or depending on how we really work things out with Muse, we'll see how that's going to play out.
Great. All right. Well, I think that's we're getting close to time.
Okay.
And I wanted to thank you very much again for showing us everything you and your team, your collaborators have been working on, Neurochems and Rix. Thank you as well for being part of this presentation and interview. I mean, is just to kind of wrap up. This is a work in progress, but obviously it's been a long time effort, and you guys have so much already built. You're hoping to exhibit later this year, premiere later this year, and to do so in Europe. You're doing it in the Resonite platform, which, if anyone hasn't tried Resonite, either in PC or PCVR, it's free, it's accessible, and it's quite amazing what people are doing, not just with this project, but with others. Particularly like the Creator Jam that Rix is very much a part of. So,
and you can come in off Quest. Hey.
A Quest and PC, you mean?
Yes. Well, yeah. Quest Link, or tethered, but I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, and if you are listening and you are interested in supporting as a sponsor, either of something you think would be valuable to this project, or you're a producer, definitely reach out. Then we'll have some contact information for Tosca in the comments later. But thank you very much again, all three of you, and to all of our
thank you. Let's stand together. Come here.
Yeah. Do a quick.
Do a little quick. All
Avengers
of us together. So how do we? Oh, there we go.
Who's gonna take the picture? That's always the classic question.
Yeah. Who's taking the picture? Yeah. Oh.
Here's the camera.
Oh, okay. So yeah, thank you,
There you go.
Mike. Like, thanks a lot. And it was great to go off on tangents and be a little mycelial in Resonate. But yeah, and please do feel free to reach out. I'm Nanotopia. There's Rick's, Neurochems, and even send me a contact request if you're in Resonate, and I can invite you in to chat and stuff like that. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so much.
great. There we are. All right,
Mhm.
all right. Everybody. Again, thank you very much to our audience who stayed with us for this
Yeah, thank
whole
you.
presentation, or joined us throughout it. And catch the next one. We'll be announcing the next Creating Reality session soon. From XR for Europe and XR Must. And thanks again to all of our members who helped to make this possible. All right,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.